To the staff at the Sterling Oak, Zora was invisible. A silent, trembling waitress they mocked for 3 months because she refused to make eye contact with the guests. They mistook her lowered gaze for subservience, never suspecting those same eyes had once guided a scalpel through a 7-hour craniotomy that saved a senator's daughter. They laughed at the mouse, completely unaware she was the surgeon Johns Hopkins had called the prodigy. The laughter died the moment Cade collapsed at table 12. And the quiet black waitress they'd dismissed became the only person in a room full of billionaires who could save a life. The crystal chandeliers of the Sterling Oak on Manhattan's Upper East Side cast warm amber light with that familiar, oppressive elegance that only those who served the ultra-wealthy truly understood. It was 7:45 p.m. A prime dinner service, where tips could be generous, but patience wore razor thin. Zora Miller stood at the service station near the kitchen doors, meticulously folding linen napkins into perfect triangles. She was 31, though the premature lines around her mouth and the careful slowness of her movements made her seem fragile, breakable. She moved with a deliberate, measured precision, keeping her head down, her shoulders slightly hunched as if she were perpetually bracing for a blow that never came. "Look at the ghost," whispered Megan, the senior server with perfectly styled blonde hair, adjusting her lipstick while leaning against the polished mahogany bar. She tilted her head toward Zora with practiced disdain. "I swear Derek dropped a tray yesterday 3 feet from her, and she flinched like a bomb went off. How did Stephen even hire her? She's useless." Derek Grayson, the arrogant floor manager who prowled the dining room like a predator stalking prey, smirked while reviewing the evening's reservation list. "She's a diversity hire. Has to be. I asked her to describe the Chateauneuf-du-Pape pairing for table 8 last night, and she just froze for 5 seconds before stammering something about earthy notes. 5 seconds. In this business, 5 seconds is a lifetime. The guests notice everything." Zora heard them. She always heard them. Her hearing had been honed in environments where the beep of a monitor could mean cardiac arrest, where silence in an OR was more dangerous than alarms. But she said nothing. She simply tightened her grip on the napkin, her knuckles briefly going pale beneath her brown skin. She wasn't just quiet. She was aggressively submissive. She took the worst sections without complaint. The cramped corner tables near the kitchen, the demanding regulars who snapped their fingers like she was a dog, the late seatings that kept her working past midnight. She cleaned up spilled wine that the bussers ignored. She let Derek berate her for mistakes she didn't make, for being too slow, for not reading the room, for existing in a space that had never been designed for someone like her. What they didn't see, what they couldn't see, was the way her eyes tracked every exit, every window, every potential point of crisis, the way she'd already assessed which dinner knife had the sharpest point, which tablecloth could serve as an improvised tourniquet, which guest wore a medical alert bracelet on his left wrist, the way her hands trembled not from fear, but from the sheer force of will it took to keep them still, to keep them from moving with the surgical precision they'd been trained for. "Zora!" Derek's voice cut through the ambient conversation and clinking silverware. He stood near table 5, one hand on his hip, the other gesturing impatiently. "Mr. Castellano just made eye contact with you. You do not look guests in the eye. You're here to serve, not socialize. These people are worth more than your annual salary." "Yes, sir," she murmured, head dipping lower. Megan glided past, balancing a tray of champagne flutes with practiced ease. "Nice shoes, Zora," she whispered, loud enough for the other servers to hear. "Did you get those at a thrift store? Oh, wait, you probably did." Laughter rippled through the staff clustered near the bar. "Luke, The 18-year-old busboy with kind eyes and perpetual nervousness appeared at her elbow. "Don't listen to them," he said quietly, helping her arrange fresh silverware. "They're just mean." "It's fine," Zora said, though her jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Earl, the 60-something doorman who'd worked at the Sterling Oak for 3 decades, caught her eye as she passed through the lobby to retrieve more napkins. He gave her a subtle nod. Not pity, but something else. Recognition, maybe. Respect. As if he saw something others missed. For a moment, Zora let herself remember. The courtroom 3 years ago. Camera flashes exploding like grenades, her lawyer's hand on her shoulder. Her phone on the defense table. The headline scrolling endlessly. Surgeon blamed for billionaire heir's death. Medical license under review. The Whitmore family seated in the front row, Marcus's face carved from stone, his mother weeping theatrically for the cameras. She blinked the memory away, her hands automatically smoothing an already perfect tablecloth. 3 months. She'd lasted 3 months in this gilded prison. 3 months of making herself smaller, quieter, less. 3 months of pretending the most important thing in her world was whether the Bordeaux was served at precisely 64 degrees. It was almost enough to make her believe she deserved this. Almost. The Tuesday evening shift began like all the others, with erasure. Table 7, a hedge fund manager in a $3,000 suit. He didn't look up from his phone when he snapped his fingers twice in Zora's direction. "Water, no ice, lemon on the side." Not a please, not a thank you. Just the sound of fingers snapping like she was a dog being called to heel. "Of course, sir." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. 20 minutes later, Derek intercepted her near the kitchen. "You took 7 minutes on that Pomerol for table 11. 7. Megan can handle your section for the rest of the night. You're on backup, water, bread, and clearing only." Zora's best section. The one where tips actually mattered. Gone. I was decanting it properly. Did I ask for excuses? Derek's voice climbed just loud enough to draw attention. "Do your job, Zora. Or find another one." She flinched. Hated herself for flinching. "Yes, sir." The break room at 9:47 p.m. was supposed to be empty. Yet Zora sat on the worn couch, eyes closed, trying to quiet the ringing in her ears that had nothing to do with the restaurant's ambient noise. Then voices filtered through the door, Megan and another server, Jessica. "I looked her up, you know. There was this whole trial 3 years ago." "Wait, our Zora?" "Yeah. She was a surgeon or something. Killed some rich guy's brother during an operation, lost her license. It was all over the news." Jesus. That explains why she's so jumpy. Guilt, probably. Or she's just bad at her job. Both jobs, apparently. Laughter. Cruel and casual. Zora's hands clenched into fists. She waited until they left, then opened her locker with trembling fingers. Inside, wedged behind her purse, was a small framed photograph, her younger self at 28, bright-eyed in surgical scrubs, as standing with her Johns Hopkins cohort. 8 brilliant residents who believed they'd change the world. She was smiling in that photo. Really smiling. She didn't recognize that woman anymore. Her hands shook as she closed the locker. For a long moment she stood there, coat in hand, ready to walk out and never come back. But rent was due in 6 days. And where would she go? Who would hire Dr. Zora Mitchell, the surgeon who killed Nathaniel Whitmore? She hung up her coat and returned to the floor, each step feeling like walking underwater. The physical toll was obvious now. The dark circles under her eyes from weeks of insomnia. The way she jumped when Derek raised his voice. The sense that she was disappearing inch by inch. becoming a ghost haunting her own life. Maybe that's what she deserved, to fade away entirely. Thus, the VIP reservation appeared on the board at 6:15 p.m. Table 12, party of 5, 8 p.m. sharp. Stephen Parker himself emerged from his office, a rare sighting, adjusting his tie and radiating nervous energy. "Listen up," he announced, clapping his hands. "Cade is dining with us tonight. Major potential investor. This service needs to be flawless. Derek, your point on this. Megan, you'll handle table 12 directly." Zora felt relief and disappointment in equal measure. Relief that she wouldn't have to interact with whoever this Cade person was. Disappointment that she'd miss whatever tips a major investor might leave. Derek was already in rare form, adjusting table settings with obsessive precision, inspecting wine glasses for invisible smudges, snapping at Luke for placing a fork a centimeter off-center. At 7:58 p.m., Earl opened the front door with unusual formality. A man in his early 40s entered. Sharp charcoal suit, expensive watch. The kind of casual confidence that only came from having enough money to solve any problem. Cade. He was flanked by 4 others. A severe-looking woman with a tablet, 2 men in suits that didn't quite hide their tactical awareness, and an executive assistant who Earl greeted with surprising familiarity. A regular, then. Or someone who'd been here enough that Earl remembered him. Zora was assigned to backup duty. Water, bread, clearing, invisible labor. She approached table 12 with a crystal pitcher, eyes down, filling glasses with practiced efficiency. As she poured Cade's water, she caught something, a faint tremor in his left hand as he reached for the glass. His breathing was elevated, just slightly. Her pupils dilated more than the ambient lighting warranted. Her medical training fired automatically. Sympathetic nervous system activation. Possible anxiety response. Early cardiac involvement, or... She shut it down hard. Not your problem. Not your world anymore. Across the dining room, at table 9, sat another group of well-dressed men. One of them, silver hair, cold eyes, 50-something, looked up as Zora passed. His gaze tracked her for a moment, and something flickered across his face. Recognition? No. Dismissal. The way you'd look at a piece of furniture that had been rearranged. Marcus Whitmore. Zora's blood turned to ice. She kept walking, kept her face neutral, kept breathing. He didn't know her, couldn't know her. She was invisible here. She had to be. 23 minutes into the main course, Table 12's conversation hummed with the particular energy of men negotiating millions. Cade was mid-sentence, gesturing with his fork when he stopped. His hand went to his chest. Not clutching, pressing. His face shifted, confusion, then alarm. "Mr. Cade?" His CFO leaned forward. "Sir, are you—" Cade gasped. A wet, struggling sound. His chair scraped back as he tried to stand and failed. The dining room's ambient noise fractured. Nearby tables noticed. Megan froze, tray in hand. Derek's head snapped around. "Call 911, Derek shouted, already moving. "Everyone back, give him space." He pointed at Megan. "You, get the first aid kit." Zora was clearing table 8. She turned, saw Cade's face, and every suppressed instinct screamed. His lips were blue-tinged. His neck muscles were straining, tendons standing out like cables. But his hand wasn't clutching his heart. It was at his throat. He wasn't having a heart attack. He couldn't breathe. Anaphylactic shock, complete airway obstruction, maybe 90 seconds before brain damage. She moved forward. Derek's arms shot out, blocking her. "Stay back, Zora. Paramedics are coming. His airway is closing." Her voice was low, controlled. "He has approximately 90 seconds before—" "You're a waitress," Derek hissed. "These are important people. You are not touching him. Do you understand? Cade's eyes were rolling back. His CFO was on the phone with 911, shouting the address. His security detail looked between each other, uncertain, trained for threats, not medical emergencies. 90 seconds. 80 now. Zora looked at Cade dying in front of her, then at Derek's arm blocking her path, then at the room full of witnesses with their phones already out, recording. 3 years ago, she'd tried to save a life and lost everything. She could walk away now. Protect herself. Let the paramedics handle it in the 12 minutes it would take them to arrive. Or she could do what she was born to do. Dr. Zora Mitchell's voice dropped an octave. Absolute, surgical, commanding. Move, now. Derek's eyes widened. Before he could respond, Zora shoved him aside with strength that surprised them both, dropped to her knees beside Cade, and her trembling hands went still. Zora's fingers went to Cade's neck, feeling for his pulse. Thready, racing. She tilted his head back, checked his airway. Completely obstructed. Angioedema. Severe swelling, probably allergic reaction. But the cause didn't matter now. Only the next 90 seconds mattered. "Aye, Luke!" Her voice cut through the chaos like a scalpel. The busboy materialized beside her, eyes wide. "I need a steak knife, a ballpoint pen, and rubbing alcohol from the bar. 30 seconds. Go." "You can't," Megan started. Zora's head snapped up, and the look she gave Megan contained 3 years of suppressed authority, a decade of surgical training, and the cold certainty of someone who'd held lives together in impossible circumstances. Megan's protest died in her throat. Luke returned in 28 seconds, hands shaking as he held out the items. "Good." Zora's hands didn't shake anymore. She dismantled the pen with practiced efficiency, discarding the ink cartridge, leaving only the hollow tube. She doused the steak knife in alcohol. I then located the cricothyroid membrane between Cade's thyroid and cricoid cartilage with her fingers. "Someone call the hospital," she said, her voice clinical, detached. "Tell them we have an emergency cricothyrotomy en route. Patient is male, early 40s, complete airway obstruction from suspected anaphylaxis." Earl was already on the phone. Zora made the incision, precise, controlled, exactly 2 centimeters. Blood welled. She inserted the pen tube into the opening, angling it downward toward the lungs. For 1 terrible second, nothing happened. Then Cade gasped. A horrible rattling sound as air rushed through the improvised airway. His chest heaved. Color began returning to his lips. The dining room was silent, except for Cade's ragged breathing, and someone's whispered, "Oh my God." Zora's hands moved automatically, checking his pulse, monitoring his breathing, ensuring the tube stayed in place. Her mind was somewhere else entirely. Somewhere cold and bright and focused, where the only thing that existed was the patient and the procedure. Derek's voice shattered that space. "You're fired. Security, escort her out. Now." Zora didn't look up. His airway is stable, but he needs... "You assaulted a guest." Derek's face was purple with humiliation and rage. "I don't care if you..." Cade's hand shot out, weak but deliberate, wrapping around Zora's wrist. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but aware. His lips moved, forming words around the tube in his throat. "I know you." Zora froze. Cade's eyes, still dilated but focusing now, locked onto her face with an intensity that made her want to run. "Dr. Mitchell." His voice was barely audible, rough with trauma. But the words carried to the nearest tables. "Johns Hopkins. The Whitmore trial." The room erupted in whispers. Phone cameras swiveled toward her. Derek's expression shifted from anger to confusion. At table 9, Marcus Whitmore stood abruptly, his chair scraping loud against the hardwood. His face had gone chalk white. Stephen Parker pushed through the crowd. "Doctor? Zora? What is he talking about?" Before she could answer, before she could even process what was happening, Cade's body convulsed. His vitals, which had been stabilizing, suddenly spiked. His pupils contracted, then dilated erratically. His free hand clawed at his chest. Zora's medical mind shifted into overdrive. The tracheotomy had solved the immediate crisis. His airway was open, he was breathing. But something else was wrong. The progression was wrong. The symptoms didn't match simple anaphylaxis. She checked his pulse again. Irregular, too fast. His skin was clammy. Muscle fasciculations in his arms and legs, neurological symptoms appearing post-crisis. Her blood ran cold. This isn't just anaphylaxis. She looked up, scanning the room, her gaze landing on Marcus Whitmore standing frozen near table 9. The delayed onset, the systematic progression, the neurological involvement. She looked back at Cade, then at the crowd. "He's been poisoned." The word poisoned detonated in the space like a grenade. Guests bolted for exits. Stephen Parker was already on his phone with 911, demanding police. Derek stood paralyzed, his carefully constructed authority shattered. Marcus Whitmore moved toward the door. Earl stepped in front of it, arms crossed, immovable. Marcus turned back, and his composure rebuilding like armor. When he spoke, his voice carried across the room with practiced authority. "That woman is Dr. Zora Mitchell. She lost her medical license 3 years ago for reckless endangerment resulting in death." He paused, letting that sink in. "My brother's death. And now she's accusing me of poisoning someone to cover up her second victim?" Every phone camera swung to capture Zora's reaction. The words hit like physical blows. All the trauma, the courtroom, the headlines, the congressional testimony, the medical board hearing, the 3 years of exile, crashed over her in a wave. Her hands started shaking again. The old paralysis crept back into her limbs. She could feel herself disappearing. Zora's vision tunneled. Marcus's voice echoed in her ears, mixing with memories of his testimony. "She experimented on my brother. She ignored protocols. She killed him." Her hands trembled on Cade's wrist. She could feel dozens of eyes on her, judging, recording, condemning. The same look the medical board had given her. The same look the jury had given her before they decided her career was over. She should walk away. Protect herself. Let the system handle it. Then Cade's fingers tightened on her wrist. His eyes, glassy with pain, but clear with intention, locked onto hers. "Please." The word was barely a whisper, meant only for her. "I know. What happened to you? I know. It wasn't your fault." She stared at him. How could he know? But right now, "I'm dying." His grip strengthened. "And you're the only person in this room who can save me." Zora looked at him, then at Marcus, yet whose face showed the first crack of uncertainty. Then at Derek, frozen in impotent authority. Then at the phones recording everything. Her humiliation, her exposure, her choice. The hospital was 20 minutes away. Cade was deteriorating. His blood pressure was dropping. She could see it in his pallor, feel it in his weakening pulse. Whatever toxin was in his system was working fast. She could walk away, preserve what little remained of her anonymity. Or she could step back into the identity that had destroyed her. Dr. Zora Mitchell took a breath, straightened her shoulders. And when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of every surgery she'd ever performed, every life she'd ever saved, Every hour she'd spent becoming the surgeon Johns Hopkins had called the prodigy. "Everyone sit down. Now." The command was so absolute that half the room obeyed before thinking. "Luke, I need the molecular gastronomy station from the kitchen. The sous vide, the emulsifiers, everything. Earl, call the hospital. Tell them we have acute poisoning, possible organophosphate or designer toxin. They need to prep for secondary treatment when we arrive." Earl was already dialing. "Megan, first aid kit and every bottle from the wine cellar marked for medical emergencies." "Now." Megan ran. Zora's gaze finally landed on Derek. "Stay out of my way." Then she turned to Marcus, and her voice went cold as surgical steel. "You want to tell them what really happened to your brother, Marcus? Or should I?" Marcus's mouth opened, closed. No words came. Zora turned back to Cade. Her hands were steady now. She was Dr. Mitchell again, and she had work to do. Table 12 became an operating theater. Luke and Earl cleared everything: plates, glasses, centerpieces, creating a sterile field as best they could. Zora commandeered the molecular gastronomy station from the kitchen. Precision temperature control, pharmaceutical-grade emulsifiers, equipment designed for culinary artistry, but perfect for emergency chemistry. Cade was convulsing now. His blood pressure was crashing. Zora checked his pupils again, pinpoint, then dilating. Classic organophosphate poisoning or something similar. A designer toxin, probably. Expensive. The kind of thing you'd need connections to acquire. The kind of thing a billionaire could access. She barked orders like she was running a trauma bay. "Luke, I need that activated charcoal from the medical kit." "Earl, hold his head stable." "I'm Megan." She glanced at the senior server who'd mocked her for 3 months. "I need you to monitor his pulse. 2 fingers here. Count out loud." Megan's hands shook, but she obeyed. 128, 130. Zora's hands moved with practiced efficiency, compounding ingredients most people wouldn't recognize. Activated charcoal to bind toxins. Sodium thiosulfate as a sulfur donor. Calcium gluconate from the kitchen's spherification supplies to counteract nerve agent effects. She talked through every step, partly to maintain focus, partly to create a record for the cameras still rolling. Binding the toxin first, then chelation to facilitate renal clearance, calcium to restore neural function. "You're experimenting on him." Marcus's voice cut through her concentration. He was still in the dining room, his security having moved to contain all witnesses. His composure had returned. That billionaire armor. "Just like you experimented on Nathaniel. This is why you lost your license, Dr. Mitchell. Because you can't help yourself." Zora didn't look up. Her hands continued their precise work, measuring, mixing, preparing the IV line Luke had retrieved from the first aid kit. When she spoke, her voice was clinical, devastating. "Your brother died because you refused to approve the experimental treatment that might have saved him." She inserted the IV line into Cade's arm with practiced ease. "I recommended it. 3 other specialists recommended it. But it wasn't FDA approved. And you were terrified of the liability, of the press, of anything that might tarnish the Whitmore name." The room had gone silent. "So you said no." "Well, and when Nathaniel died anyway, when the standard treatment failed exactly like we predicted, you blamed me. You buried the truth with expensive lawyers and media manipulation. You destroyed my career because you needed a scapegoat for your own guilt." She finally looked up at Marcus. His face was stone, but something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, shame, rage. "But right now, Marcus." She turned back to Cade, administering the compound. "Right now, I'm saving the man you tried to murder. And every single person in this room is watching." Marcus had no response. The cameras captured his silence. For 8 agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Cade's convulsions continued. His blood pressure dropped further. Zora's hands remained steady, adjusting dosages, monitoring vitals, running calculations in her head. Then, gradually, his convulsions slowed. His breathing steadied. Color crept back into his face. His eyes opened. "Welcome back," Zora said quietly. The room erupted in chaos, but she barely heard it. She was checking his vitals one more time, ensuring the crisis had passed, being absolutely certain before she allowed herself to feel anything. Dr. Zora Mitchell had done what she was born to do. And this time, everyone had seen it. The paramedics arrived 9 minutes later, taking over Cade's care with professional efficiency. Police arrived 3 minutes after that, immediately moving to secure the scene and separate witnesses. Marcus Whitmore was detained for questioning, protesting his innocence, but dozens of phones had recorded everything. Zora's accusation, his lack of denial, his visible guilt. Thus, Stephen Parker approached Zora as she washed blood from her hands in the kitchen sink. "Dr. Mitchell, I had no idea who you were. Please, I'm sorry, stay. I'll triple your salary. I'll make Derek apologize. You knew exactly who I was?" Zora's voice was calm, but her eyes were hard. "You hired me because I was desperate and would work for minimum wage. Because I'd take abuse without complaint. You saw someone broken, and you exploited it." She dried her hands. "Keep your apology." She walked past him. Derek tried to speak. She didn't even glance his way. Earl caught her at the back door. "Been watching you for 3 months," he said quietly. "Knew you were someone who'd been something. Could see it in your eyes." He held out a business card, Cade's. "He asked me to give you this. Wants to speak with you. Private room upstairs." Zora took the card, turned it over in her fingers. She could leave, walk out into the Manhattan night and disappear again. Or she could face whatever came next. She climbed the stairs. Cade sat in a leather chair, IV still in his arm. Color returned to his face. He looked exhausted, but alive. When she entered, he gestured to the chair across from him. "Dr. Mitchell. Or do you prefer Zora?" "I don't know anymore." She sat, suddenly aware of how tired she was. "I own the Sterling Oak," he said, "through shell companies. I have been watching you for 18 months. Her eyes widened. "I was at your trial. Sat in the back. I knew the Whitmores were lying. I had analysts dig into Nathaniel's case. You were right about the experimental treatment. Marcus killed his brother through cowardice. It then destroyed you to hide his guilt. Why didn't you say anything? Would you have believed a stranger?" Cade leaned forward. "I needed to understand who you'd become. Whether the surgeon Johns Hopkins called the prodigy was gone or just hiding." "What do you want?" Zora asked, though part of her already knew. "I have lawyers, better than the Whitmores. I have media connections who'll tell your story. The real story, I have a biotech division that needs a chief medical officer to develop emergency medical technology." He paused. "I can give you back everything they took. Your license, your reputation, your life." It was everything she'd lost. Everything she'd believed was gone forever. But accepting help from a billionaire, using his power to fix what billionaires had broken, felt like compromise, like surrender. "There's a condition," she said finally. "Name it." "Any technology we develop goes to public hospitals first, not just the wealthy, everyone." Cade smiled. "Deal." 6 months later, Dr. Zora Mitchell walked through Mount Sinai's ER, white coat pristine, hands steady. She was training residents on emergency toxicology, turning her worst experience into something that could save lives. "Dr. Mitchell," one resident asked, "is it true you once performed a cricothyrotomy in a restaurant with a steak knife?" Zora smiled. Not the scared, submissive smile of Zora Miller, the waitress, but the confident smile of someone who'd reclaimed herself. "Yes, and I'd do it again." She met each resident's eyes. Because a doctor's oath doesn't stop at hospital doors. And skill doesn't disappear just because someone tries to take it from you. I'll remember that. She was whole again. Not because someone powerful had decided she deserved it, but because she'd chosen to save a life when it mattered most. Consequences be damned.